Hey there, my name is Logan Pierce. I used to be the lead engineer at Novacore, a company I helped build quite literally from the ground up with lines of code and a lot of late nights. I'm not really the type to stand on a stage or look for applause, you know? I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of guy. But today I need to tell you something the media never quite got right, something that got buried under all the headlines. I used to believe that if you worked hard, stayed humble, and genuinely tried to do good in the world, then the world, or at least the people around you, would recognize it. I poured every bit of myself, every waking hour into a project called Aura. It was designed to help the visually impaired navigate the world with a new level of dignity and independence. This wasn't just a job for me, it was personal. In just 1 week, only 7 days after winning the most prestigious award in our industry for Aura, an award that felt like the culmination of a life's mission, I was fired. They told me that I was too ambitious. So if you think your talent, your dedication, your good intentions alone will protect you from betrayal, stick around. Because this story, tomorrow, well, it might just change the way you see everything. It all started on what should have been one of the best nights of my life, the Innovatech Awards. Picture this, a grand ballroom, chandeliers sparkling, the low hum of hundreds of conversations, the clinking of glasses. I remember my heart was hammering against my ribs, not from nerves exactly, but from a kind of profound anticipation. I was there with my team from Novacore, and our project, Aura, was up for the grand prize. Aura wasn't just another gadget. It was born from a promise I'd made to myself years ago after losing my younger brother, Ethan. He was visually impaired, and a simple walk to the corner store ended in tragedy because the navigation tools available then were just inadequate. Aura was my way of making sure no one else felt that helplessness, that loss. It used a sophisticated AI to provide real-time, intuitive guidance. It was more than tech, it was a lifeline. When they announced Aura as the winner, the applause felt like emotion washing over me. I remember walking up to the stage, the spotlight almost blinding. Grant Von, our CEO, was beaming, clapping me on the back. He gave this glowing speech about innovation and Novacore's bright future. I said a few words, mostly thanking my team and mentioning Ethan, just his name, but it felt like he was there with me. Holding that award, it felt heavy, not just the physical weight, but the weight of years of work, of hope, of grief channeled into something good. For a moment standing there, I thought, this is it. We did it. Ethan, this is for you. It was pure, unadulterated validation. The kind that makes you feel like all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights were worth it. The celebration continued late into the night. People kept coming up, congratulating me. Claire Walsh, my mentor, someone I'd looked up to for years, even before Novacore, gave me this huge hug. She'd always championed my work, always pushed me to think bigger. Her approval meant the world. You deserve this, Logan, she'd said, her eyes shining. You truly do. I felt on top of the world, like I was finally making a real difference. I remember thinking this is just the beginning. With Novacore's backing, with the momentum from this award, Aura could change millions of lives. I went home that night exhausted, but with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. I even allowed myself to dream a little about Aura's future, about the people it would help. The next morning, I walked into the office with a spring in my step. The award was sounding on my desk, gleaming. My team was buzzing, ideas flying for the next phase of development. I felt this incredible energy, this drive to push Aura even further. Around 10 a.m., Grant Vaughn's assistant called. Mr. Vaughn would like to see you in his office, Logan, immediately. I figured it was about next steps, maybe a strategy meeting for Aura's rollout. I even grabbed a notepad, ready to take notes. Grant's office was on the top floor, all glass and polished steel, overlooking the city. He was standing by the window when I walked in, his back to me. Logan, come in, close the door, he said, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth from the night before. A knot started to form in my stomach. Something felt off. He turned around and his expression was unreadable. Not hostile, not friendly, just Blank. Grant, good morning, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Exciting times, huh? He didn't smile, he just gestured to one of the plush leather chairs opposite his massive desk. Sit down, Logan. I sat. The silence stretched for a moment, thick and uncomfortable. Then he said it, just like that. No preamble, no warning. Logan, we've decided to terminate your employment with Novacor, effective immediately. I swear for a second, the sound in the room just died. I thought I must have misheard him. I'm sorry, what? Terminate my employment? Grant, we just won the Innovatech Award last night. Aura, he cut me off. Yes, Aura, a remarkable achievement. And you've done good work, Logan. Very good work. He paused, then added, perhaps too good. My mind was reeling. Too good? What does that even mean? Grant, this is my project, my life's work. Novacor appreciates your contributions, he said, his voice like ice. But the board feels, and I concur, that your vision for Aura, your ambitions for it, are becoming misaligned with the company's broader strategic interest. Misaligned? I want to help people, Grant. That's always been the mission. Your mission, you said. My voice was rising, a tremor of disbelief, of anger, starting to shake through me. Things change, Logan. The market changes. Our priorities have to adapt. He stood up, a clear dismissal. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Your final paycheck and severance details will be mailed to you. I just stared at him, speechless. The man who less than 24 hours ago was praising me on a national stage was now firing me? And the reason? Too ambitious? It made no sense. It felt like the floor had just vanished beneath my feet. The award on my desk suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. You can't be serious, I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. I am perfectly serious, Logan. His eyes were cold, distant. This decision is final. The shock was so profound, it was like being hit by a physical force. Betrayal. It's a word you hear, but you don't understand its depth until it's cutting into you. And this cut deep. A quiet rage started to simmer beneath the shock, a cold, hard knot in my chest. I'd poured my soul into Novacor, into Aura. And for what? To be discarded like I was nothing. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. I didn't say another word. There was nothing to say. The man I thought was a visionary leader was just a suit, a ruthless suit. As security, two stone-faced guards I'd never seen before led me out. I remember catching a glimpse of Claire Walsh down the hall. She saw me. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and she looked away. That small gesture, that flicker of avoidance, hit me almost as hard as Grant's words. Just when I thought I'd finally made it, the ground wasn't just pulled from under me. It was vaporized. The days that followed were a blur of disbelief and a hollow, aching confusion. I'd wake up, and for a split second, everything would be normal. Then the reality would crash down. I was out, fired, blacklisted, probably. The official company line, if anyone asked, was that I'd left to pursue other opportunities. A lie so blatant, it was almost laughable. My access to Novacor's systems was, of course, immediately revoked. My email, my files, everything. Gone. It felt like a part of me had been amputated. I spent a lot of time just staring out the window of my small apartment, replaying that final conversation with Grant over and over. Too ambitious. What did it mean? My ambition was to make Aura the best it could be, to get it to the people who needed it. How could that be a problem? The shock was slowly morphing into a deep, simmering suspicion. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a simple firing. There was more to it. Driven by this gnawing feeling, I tried to access some of the public-facing archived Novacor system logs. Things that weren't behind the main firewall, but showed general project updates and team attributions. I still had some old links bookmarked. Most were dead ends, but I found a few obscure corners, cached pages, and that's when I saw the first oddity. My name, which had been on dozens of key documents and design schematics for Aura as lead engineer, was gone, scrubbed, replaced in some instances by names of junior engineers who'd had minimal involvement. or sometimes just a generic NovaCore development team. It was like they were systematically erasing me from Aura's history. My heart pounded. This wasn't just about firing me. They were trying to steal my legacy. Then, a few nights later, maybe a week after the firing, there was a knock on my door. It was late, almost 11. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and my breath caught. It was Derek Lynn. Derek was one of the quietest guys on the Aura team. Brilliant coder, but incredibly shy, almost painfully introverted. He rarely spoke in meetings, preferred to communicate through meticulously written emails. We'd worked closely on some of Aura's core algorithms, and I'd always respected his intellect. But he wasn't someone I'd ever expect to show up at my door, especially not unannounced, and especially not now. I opened the door and he looked nervous. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot, clutching a beat-up messenger bag to his chest. "Derek, what are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. "Logan, hi, can I come in for a minute?" He mumbled, his eyes darting around the hallway. "Yeah, sure, of course." I stepped aside, a sense of unease settling over me. He looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He walked in, glancing around my small living room, as if he expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "Everything okay, Derek?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my internal alarms were blaring. He took a deep breath. "No, not really. Logan, I had to come. I couldn't. I've been seeing things at NovaCore, things that aren't right." My suspicions sharpened into a cold point of tension. "What kind of things?" "Meetings," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. After you left. Grant's been having these closed-door meetings. Very hush-hush, with people I don't recognize. Suits, foreign accents, some of them." "About Aura?" I pressed. Derek nodded, his eyes wide. "Yes, specifically about Aura. They're talking about fast-tracking a sale, a complete buyout of the technology." A cold dread washed over me. "A sale to who?" "I don't know for sure," Derek said, wringing his hands. "But it's not about expanding its reach for a humanitarian purpose, Logan. The language they're using, it's all about profit maximization. Stripping down features to cut costs, repurposing the core tech for other applications." "Other applications?" I felt a chill. Aura's AI was sophisticated. In the wrong hands, it could be used for surveillance, for tracking, things I'd never intended. And Claire Walsh is in all those meetings," Derek added, his voice barely audible. "Claire, my mentor, the woman who'd hug me at the awards, who'd championed my work." Disbelief warred with a sickening sense of betrayal. "Claire," I repeated, stunned. "Yeah," Derek confirmed, looking miserable. She seems to be facilitating it all, taking notes, presenting the project data." He hesitated, then pulled a thin, folded piece of paper from his pocket. I printed something. It's a fragment of an email I wasn't supposed to see. It mentions a shell corporation, Zenith Dynamics, and a timeline for transfer of intellectual property. I took the paper. My hands were trembling slightly. Zenith Dynamics, I'd never heard of them, but the implications were clear. Grant wasn't just firing me. He was selling off my life's work, my tribute to my brother, to the highest bidder, and Claire. Claire was helping him. The initial shock of being fired was nothing compared to this. This was a betrayal on a whole new level. The small detail of my name being erased from documents suddenly clicked into a much larger, much uglier picture. Derek's unexpected visit, his quiet courage in coming to me. It was a lifeline. A spark of cautious curiosity ignited amidst the anger and hurt. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone in this. Maybe there was a way to find out what was really going on. Derek's visit left me reeling, but also with a strange sense of clarity. The vague suspicions it harbored had solidified into a sickening certainty. Grant wasn't just a ruthless CEO. He was actively orchestrating the theft of Aura and Claire. Claire, my mentor, the person I trusted almost implicitly, was complicit. The thought of her sitting in those meetings, coolly discussing the sale of something so deeply personal to me, felt like a fresh wound. "We need more proof, Derek," I said to him a couple of days later. We were huddled in my cramped apartment, which had become our makeshift command center. The blinds were drawn, and the only light came from my laptop screen. Derek, despite his natural reticence, was surprisingly resolute. It was clear that what was happening at Novacore offended his own sense of integrity. "I can try to access more internal files," he offered, his voice still quiet but firm. "They've tightened security since you left, but there are always backdoors, forgotten pathways in a system as old as Novacore's." Over the next week, it was like a clandestine operation. Derek, bless his quiet courage, would feed me snippets of information, encrypted file names, fragments of meeting minutes he'd managed to glimpse or copy. He was risking his job, maybe more, but he believed in Aura's original purpose. He believed in me. It was humbling. I spent my days piecing together the puzzle. It was our slow, painstaking work. Each new piece of information felt like another small betrayal. We discovered that Zenith Dynamics, the shell corporation Derek had mentioned, was a front for a much larger, much more dubious foreign tech conglomerate known for acquiring innovative technologies and then either weaponizing them or selling them off to the highest, often shadiest, bidder. They weren't interested in helping the visually impaired. They were interested in Aura's sophisticated AI for applications that made my stomach turn. Advanced surveillance, autonomous drone guidance, things that were the antithesis of everything Aura stood for. The real blow, the one that truly shattered me, came when Derek managed to recover a series of deleted emails from a supposedly secure server. It took him nearly 3 days of meticulous, nerve-wracking work. He sent them to me in an encrypted file. I opened it, my heart pounding. The emails were between Grant Vaughn and Claire Walsh, and they dated back months before I was fired, months before the Innovatech Award. They were discussing me, discussing how my idealistic fixation on Aura's humanitarian angle was a bottleneck to monetization, how my unwillingness to compromise on core features for wider market appeal, which meant stripping it down for profit, was making me a liability. Grant had written, "Logan's too attached. He'll never agree to the pivot we need. We have to find a way to sideline him after the award gives us the PR boost." And Claire had replied, her words burned into my brain. "I agree, Grant. Logan is brilliant, but his sentimentality is a weakness in this business. I can manage him, keep him focused on the technicals until the time is right. He trusts me. Once Aura is stable and the award is secured, we can transition him out. I'll ensure all his knowledge is transferred." Transferred, like I was a hard drive to be backed up and then wiped. I had to read it several times before the full impact hit me. She hadn't just been complicit after I was fired. She'd been actively plotting against me for months. Every encouraging word, every piece of advice, every shared coffee where we'd talked about Aura's potential. Had it all been a lie? A calculated manipulation? The Innovatech Award? It wasn't a recognition of my work. It was a tool. A stepping stone for them to increase Aura's value before selling it off and discarding me. The heartbreak was immense. It was a physical ache in my chest. This wasn't just a professional betrayal, it felt deeply personal. Claire had been like family. She knew about Ethan. She knew what Aura meant to me. And she had used my trust, against me. I leaned back in my chair, the emails blurring on the screen. Disbelief warred with a cold, hard anger. The mask hadn't just slipped. They'd been ripped off, revealing something ugly and rotten underneath. It wasn't some faceless enemy who had betrayed me most profoundly. It was someone I had respected, admired, even loved, in a way. That night, sleep was impossible. The image of Claire's smiling face at the awards ceremony, her words, "You deserve this, Logan," echoed in my mind, now twisted into a cruel mockery. The depth of her deception was staggering. But amidst the pain, a new feeling began to emerge. A steely resolve. They thought they could just erase me, steal my work, and walk away. They underestimated me. They underestimated my commitment to Aura's true purpose. And they definitely underestimated what I would do to protect it. The discovery of Claire's long-term deception, her active role in the plan to oust me and sell Aura, was a turning point. The raw grief and shock began to coalesce into something else. A cold, sharp focus. There was no room for shouting, no desire for a dramatic confrontation. That wasn't my style, and frankly, it wouldn't achieve anything against people like Grant and Claire. They operated in the shadows, with lies and manipulation. I realized I needed to meet them on a different battlefield, one of my own choosing, using my own strengths. "They're moving fast," Derek reported a few days later, his voice tight with urgency during one of our hushed calls. He was still my inside line, my only window into Novacore. "The deal with Zenith Dynamics, it's almost finalized. They're planning a big press launch in 2 weeks. Grant wants to unveil Novacore's enhanced aura to the world, position it as their flagship product before the ink is even dry on the sale." Enhanced aura. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I knew what that meant. A stripped-down, profit-driven version, marketed with all the humanitarian language I'd crafted, but utterly devoid of its original soul. 2 weeks, I said, my mind racing. That's not a lot of time. "Logan, what are we going to do?" Derek asked, and I could hear the anxiety in his voice. He'd risked so much. A plan began to form, not a plan of loud revenge, but of precise, undeniable truth. "We're not going to stop them, Derek," I said slowly. "Not yet. We're going to let them walk right into the spotlight they've so desperately craved." There was a pause on the other end. "I don't understand." "They think they've won. They think I'm broken, defeated, out of the picture," I explained, a quiet determination hardening my voice. "We're going to use that. We're going to set a trap, a digital one they'll never see coming until it's too late." The core of the plan was twofold. First, we needed to gather irrefutable evidence of their wrongdoing and my true authorship of Aura. Derek had already done incredible work getting those emails. But we needed more, something tied directly to the sale. "Derek," I said, "can you get access to the latest Aura build they're planning to demo? The one they'll use at the launch?" He hesitated. "It's locked down tight, but maybe. There's a staging server. It's less monitored." "Good. And can you find out who at Zenith Dynamics is the main signatory on their end? We need to link this directly to them." Over the next few days, Derek worked his magic, a digital ghost in Novacore's machine. He managed to get me the information on Zenith's contact, a shadowy figure named Alistair Finch. He also, incredibly, got me a copy of the near-final Aura build they were preparing. While he did that, I worked on my part. I created a series of seemingly innocuous documents, detailed technical specifications for Aura, some early design notes, things that looked like my original work. But these documents were different. I embedded tiny, almost undetectable digital trackers within them. If anyone opened them, especially from within Novacore or Zenith's networks, I'd know. I also crafted a master file, a sort of digital Trojan horse, disguised as a final patent submission for Aura under my name. This file contained copies of Grant and Claire's incriminating emails, details of the Zenith Dynamics shell company, and evidence of their systematic erasure of my contributions. "Derek, I need you to do something very risky," I said. "I need you to upload these updated patent documents into a shared folder that, Grant or Claire or someone on their legal team will access before the launch. Make it look like a legitimate last-minute addition from the archive." He was silent for a moment. "They'll be scrutinizing everything. If they find out, they won't be looking for this, not from you, not now," I said, trying to project confidence I only partially felt. "They think you're just a quiet coder. They'll assume it's an oversight, some old files being cataloged." He agreed, his loyalty and bravery astonishing me yet again. The second and most crucial part of the plan was the kill switch. Using the Aura build Derek had procured, I began to meticulously examine its code. It was my architecture, my digital DNA. I knew its every strength and, more importantly, its every potential vulnerability. Deep within the core operating system of Aura, I found a way to insert a hidden override, a sequence of commands that, when activated remotely, would interrupt any demonstration. But it wouldn't just crash the system. Oh no, it would do something far more effective. It would hijack whatever display Aura was connected to and project a sequence of information. My information, the evidence, Building that kill switch was intense. It took days of nonstop coding, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of purpose. Every line of code had to be perfect, invisible until activated. It was a silent counterattack, forged in lines of software. No shouting, no dramatic revenge speeches, just a single, precisely timed strike that would unravel everything they'd built on lies. The anticipation was almost unbearable. We had one shot at this. If it failed, they'd not only get away with stealing Aura, but they'd likely find a way to bury me for good. But if it worked, the truth would come out in a way no one could ignore. The focus was intense. All the pain, the betrayal, it was all channeled into this single quiet act of defiance. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, or even just for Aura. I was fighting for the principle that truth matters, that integrity matters, and I was ready. The day of the NovaCore launch event arrived with a kind of dreadful anticipation. It was being held at a large, modern convention center, the kind with soaring glass atriums and an air of corporate self-importance. The media buzz was significant, thanks to the recent Innovatech Award and Grant's relentless PR machine. They were billing it as the unveiling of the future of assistive technology. The irony was a bitter pill. Derek had managed to get me a press pass through a contact of a contact, a freelance tech blogger who owed him a favor and wouldn't ask too many questions. Disguised in a borrowed suit that felt a size too big, with glasses I didn't need and a baseball cap pulled low, I blended into the throng of journalists, cameramen, and industry analysts. My heart was a relentless drum against my ribs. I carried a small, unassuming laptop in my bag. On it was the trigger for the kill switch. The main auditorium was packed. A massive screen dominated the stage, currently displaying the NovaCore logo. The atmosphere was electric with manufactured excitement. I found a spot near the back, trying to remain inconspicuous, my senses on high alert. I saw Grant Vaughn glad-handing some VIPs near the front, his smile wide and confident. Claire Walsh was there too, standing a little off to the side, looking poised and professional in a sharp business suit. Seeing her, so calm, so collected, sent a fresh wave of cold anger through me. Did she feel nothing? No guilt? No regret? The lights dimmed. A dramatic orchestral swell filled the room, and Grant Vaughn strode onto the stage to a round of applause. He looked every bit the triumphant CEO. "Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, innovators," he began, his voice booming with false enthusiasm. "Today is a landmark day. Today, NovaCore doesn't just introduce a product. We unveil a revolution, a technology born from a vision to empower, to connect, to transform lives." He went on like that for several minutes, spewing corporate platitudes, talking about innovation and synergy, and all the usual buzzwords. He even had the gall to mention the years of dedicated research by the brilliant minds at NovaCore, carefully avoiding any specific names. My name, of course, was never uttered. It was as if I had never existed. Then he got to the main event. And now it is my distinct honor to present to you Aura. The lights focused on a sleek, polished version of the Aura device on a pedestal. It looked beautiful, I had to admit, but it was a hollow beauty. Aura isn't just an assistive device, Grant continued, picking it up, holding it aloft. It's a companion, an intuitive guide that will redefine independence for millions. Let me show you. He gestured to the massive screen hanging upon him. We're going to give you a live demonstration of Aura's incredible capabilities. This was it, my moment. My hands were sweating as I discreetly opened my laptop. I had a secure, encrypted connection established. The kill switch code was ready. On stage, Grant was interacting with the Aura device, talking to it. "Aura, show me the safest route to the nearest coffee shop." The big screen flickered, ready to display the navigation interface. My finger hovered over the enter key. My breath caught in my throat. Now I hit enter. For a split second, nothing happened. My heart leaped into my throat. Did it fail? And then, get this, the huge screen behind Grant didn't show a map. Instead, it flickered, went black for a heartbeat, and then a document appeared. A crystal clear image of one of the emails between Grant and Claire, the one where they discussed sidelining me. A confused murmur rippled through the audience. Grant, mid-sentence, faltered. He glanced back at the screen, his confident smile freezing. Before he could react, the screen changed. Now it displayed transaction records, partial but damning, between Novacore and Zenith Dynamics. Dates, amounts, wire transfer codes. Another gasp from the audience, louder this time. I could see camera flashes going off. Grant was stammering now, trying to regain control. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be experiencing a slight technical difficulty. Too late. The screen changed again. This time, it was a scanned image of my original patent filing for Aura, with my name clearly visible as the sole inventor. Side by side with it, one of the altered documents where my name had been systematically removed. Forged signatures highlighted. The murmur became a roar. People were standing up, pointing, and then the final blow. The screen went dark and an audio file began to play. It was a recording Derek had managed to capture from one of those shady, closed-door meetings. Grant's voice, unmistakable, discussing my removal. Logan's too idealistic for where we need to take this. We get the award, we leverage his PR, then we transition him out and bring in a team that understands market realities. The Zenith deal depends on a cleaner narrative. The audio was crystal clear, echoing through the stunned silence of the auditorium. Grant Vaughn stood frozen on stage, his face ashen. Claire Walsh, I saw from the corner of my eye, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her composure had shattered. In front of the world, in front of the media, his investors, his peers, the real story was playing out, and no one could look away. The shock in the room was palpable. But for me, hidden in the chaos, it was a moment of profound, quiet vindication. My carefully laid trap had sprung. Truth, it turned out, could hijack any spotlight. And the emotional release, watching their empire of lies crumble under the weight of undeniable evidence, was immense. It wasn't triumph I felt, not exactly. It was justice, raw, unfiltered, and perfectly timed. The scene in that auditorium, it was pandemonium. As Grant Vaughn's damning words echoed through the hall from the audio clip, you could feel the atmosphere shift from confused shock to outright outrage. Camera crews who had been there to capture a triumphant product launch were now scrambling, focusing their lenses on Grant's pale, horrified face. He stood there under the harsh stage lights, speechless, exposed. It didn't take long for the authorities, who must have been alerted by someone in the audience, or perhaps even by Novacore's own increasingly nervous legal team, to arrive. I watched, still from the relative anonymity of the back of the room, as two uniformed officers walked onto the stage. There was a brief, hushed conversation, and then, incredibly, Grant Vaughn, CEO of Novacore, was escorted off stage, not in triumph, but in handcuffs, live, in front of everyone. The gasps were audible. Justice, it seemed, could be swift when the evidence was this public and undeniable. And Claire, oh man, Claire, she completely melted down. As the chaos erupted, I saw her try to slip away, but she was quickly surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Later, I heard she had a full-blown panic attack backstage, and in a torrent of tears and incoherent rambling, confessed her role in the whole sordid affair. She admitted to spying on me, to helping Grant manipulate the narrative, to actively participating in the plan to sell Aura to Zenith Dynamics. Her carefully constructed facade of the supportive mentor, the principled professional, had crumbled to dust. There was a part of me, a very small part, that felt a pang of something like pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the sheer weight of her betrayal. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was immense. Novacore's stock plummeted. The deal with Zenith Dynamics, of course, evaporated. There were investigations, lawsuits. And through it all, the evidence I'd presented, the emails, the documents, the audio recording, became central to the case. My lawyers, whom I'd contacted immediately after the event, worked tirelessly, and eventually the courts ruled in my favor. I legally regained full ownership of Aura, my invention, my intellectual property. You'd think I'd feel ecstatic, right? Vindicated, joyful. But honestly, I didn't. There was a sense of relief, yes, a sense that justice in a legal sense had been served. But there was no joy. The whole experience had cost me too much. My trust in people, especially those I'd looked up to, was shattered. The sense of betrayal, particularly from Claire, left a deep scar. Winning back Aura felt hollow in a way, like winning a battle but realizing the war had changed you irrevocably. I began the slow process of rebuilding. Not just Aura, but myself. My perspective on things had shifted. I realized that talent, hard work, even good intentions, they weren't enough. Character, that was the foundation. Who you chose to surround yourself with, who you chose to trust, that mattered more than anything. I started to think about what I wanted to do next, not just with Aura, but with my life. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain. I would be far more careful about who I allowed to walk it with me. The quiet strength I'd found in fighting for the truth was now guiding me, helping me to heal, to reflect on what truly mattered. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about integrity, and about carefully, deliberately, choosing the kind of future I wanted to build. The 6 months following the Novacore implosion were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media inquiries, and a whole lot of soul-searching. Regaining ownership of Aura was one thing. Deciding what to do with it, and with my life, was another. The temptation to just disappear, to let Aura fade into a footnote of a very public scandal, was strong sometimes. The bitterness of the betrayal, especially Claire's, still lingered, a dull ache in the background of my days. But then I'd think about Ethan. I'd think about the original promise, the reason I'd poured my heart and soul into Aura in the first place. And I knew I couldn't let Grant Vaughn or Claire Walsh be the final word on that story. Their greed, their deceit, it couldn't be allowed to tarnish something that was meant for good. So I started over, from scratch. I took the settlement money from the lawsuits against Novacore, not a fortune, but enough, and I founded my own company. I called it Centra Systems, a small name for a small beginning. This time there was no big venture capital, no flashy boardroom, no promises of overnight riches. Just me, a handful of carefully chosen engineers, including Derek Lynn, who became my first hire and chief technology officer, and a shared belief in what we were doing. Derek, whose quiet courage had been so pivotal, deserved to be there building this new future with me. Our first and only mission at Centra Systems was to bring Aura back to life. But not just back to life, to make it what it was always meant to be. We called it Aura 2.0. We refined the AI, enhanced its intuitive guidance, strengthened its privacy features, and ensured its accessibility was paramount. We worked out of a modest office space, fueled by passion and an obscene amount of coffee. There were no corporate politics, no hidden agendas. Just honest work, open communication, and a shared mission. And then, about 6 months after Centra Systems was born, we launched Aura 2.0 globally. There was no massive press event, no orchestrated hype, just a quiet announcement, a website going live, and the technology speaking for itself. It was exactly how I had once envisioned it, years ago, before Novacore, before the betrayal. It was focused on the user, on providing real tangible help with dignity and respect. The response was overwhelming. Not in a flashy media frenzy kind of way, but in a deeply meaningful one. Emails poured in from visually impaired individuals, from their families, from advocacy groups, all sharing stories of how Aura 2.0 was making a difference in their lives. Each one of those messages was worth more than any industry award. Recently, a journalist asked me about the past, about Novacore, about the betrayal. They were probably looking for a soundbite about revenge, about bitterness. I just shook my head. I'm not building a future out of bitterness, I told them. That chapter is closed. What we're doing at Centra with Aura 2.0, this is about building something pure, something that serves humanity. That's the only story worth telling now. And it's true, the real victory wasn't seeing Grant Vaughn arrested or Claire Walsh disgraced. It wasn't even about reclaiming my invention, as important as that was. The real victory was in rebuilding, in creating something positive and purposeful from the ashes of deceit. It was about proving that good ideas driven by genuine intent can survive even the worst betrayals. It was about building a future on my own terms, guided by hope and a renewed sense of empowerment. And every day when I see what Ora Tudo is doing for people, I feel a calm sense of closure, a quiet affirmation that we're on the right path. For a long time, I believed justice was something granted by others, something handed down from a judge or a board of directors. I thought if I just did my job, kept my head down, and created something valuable, the system would take care of the rest. Turns out, justice isn't always granted. Sometimes it's something you have to reclaim, piece by painstaking piece, when you refuse to let go of what's right, what's true. I lost nearly everything in that ordeal. My job, my professional reputation, the project I'd poured my life into, and even the one person, my mentor, whom I trusted most in my career. But through that fire, I learned something incredibly valuable. Real talent, genuine creativity, it can't truly be stolen or suppressed for long. And trust, once it's been broken, teaches you to place it much more carefully next time. But when placed in the right hands, it can build things that no amount of deceit can destroy. That day on the stage, during that disastrous launch event, I didn't fight with fury or shout for revenge. I just stood in truth, letting the facts speak for themselves. And the truth, well, the truth made their entire empire of lies collapse under its own weight. If you've ever felt discarded, betrayed, or overlooked, maybe for being too decent, too honest, or for simply holding on to your values when it wasn't convenient for others, I want you to know you're not alone, and you are absolutely not wrong for staying true to who you are and what you believe in. Thank you for staying with me through this journey, for listening to my story. If any part of this, any of the emotions or situations reminded you of your own experiences, or if it just resonated with you, please feel free to leave a comment below. I genuinely do read every word, and it means a lot. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, stories of resilience and quiet redemption, hit that subscribe button. We're really just getting started here. You can also support the channel through the super thanks button below the video. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to light. And sometimes, giving in whatever way you can is another way to start healing for all of us. Thanks again.